Hello, I'm Brent Bisking, Program Manager for Recruitment and Engagement at PAEA, and welcome to today's Scholarship Coffee Talk. Today we're going to talk about grant writing and how to avoid the most common pitfalls. I'll hand it off to my colleague, Dr. Denise Rizzolo, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, everyone, for coming. As you all know, this is part of our series, a six-part series. All of the webinars to date have been recorded, at least the beginning, and you'll get an email with all of those. I just want to point out, and I'll point out at the end, October 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, we are having another one. I want to submit my dissertation, but I don't know where to start. And I would encourage you that if you have anyone that's doing their doctoral work that is struggling to submit their dissertation, to come to that one as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Chris Gillette, who is a professor in the Department of PA Studies, to start us off with grant writing. How do I avoid the most common pitfalls? Dr. Gillette.
Thank you, Dr. Rizzolo. So, hey everybody, I am Chris Gillette. I am from Wake Forest University School of Medicine. My role here today is to talk about grant writing and how to avoid common pitfalls that a lot of people fall into whenever they are writing a grant or thinking about writing a grant. So I really appreciate the opportunity to lead this session, and so hopefully you can get something out of it after listening and being a part of this session. So I will start, and can everybody see the objective screen?
Yes, you're good.
Perfect, thank you. The first objective is to discuss common mistakes in grant writing that I see people make, or that I made at one point. Most of these I have made many times, and so a lot of it's trial and error and not getting grants funded and being disappointed. But every time that I've submitted a grant, I've learned something. So hopefully that is applicable here as well. The second part is to explain the importance of having the methodology worked out before submitting. I'm a methodologist. I enjoy reading the method sections of research papers probably the most. And so making sure that you work that out is extremely important, and making sure you're prepared to write the grant. And the third objective is to review the importance of having adequate faculty to assist with grants. And we'll talk more about that, what that means here in a second. Again, I'm at Wake Forest University School of Medicine. My primary appointment is in the Department of PA Studies. I also have an appointment in epidemiology and prevention, where I do pharmacoepidemiology research and health policy research. So part of my work we're doing, that I have funded right now, is looking at ways to improve healthcare access in rural areas. Just some real quick, some things that I see when people are writing grants, or I've experienced myself, the lack of time. So it really takes a long time to get a grant ready, from conception all the way to actually getting the grant written and submitted. So that's one thing I've seen a lot of people not really take into account, or I have not taken into account. And then it really results in a mad dash to the finish, or we have to wait until the next year to submit the grant. The next part is having an unclear methodology. There's a lot of times that you are so passionate about what you're doing, you know what you want to do, but sometimes it's not very clear whenever you sit down to write it, and why you want to do what you do. What is the process to actually find out if what you do or what you want to do will work. So making sure that you talk about that and make sure that's very, very clear. And we'll talk about each of these in more detail here in a second. The third mistake that I've seen is that really there are overly broad aims. So really, not focusing on a clear, feasible, and novel contribution a lot of times, because we are asking for money. We are trying to get our research funded, and a lot of times, we try to do everything we can all at once, and that's really not possible. And making sure that you have a very clear, feasible intervention, that you know how you're going to measure everything, and that it makes a contribution to the literature if it is actually funded. And then having an unrealistic timeline. I've been knocked on this on my own grants before, where you really try to do everything all at once, or you think, oh, it's 18 months, I can do these things, and you really can't. And making sure that you're that you know how long you have for the grant, and then making sure that it's actually, again, clear and feasible for what you want to do, and have enough time to measure, analyze, get your results published. So all of that these are some of the most common. There are other mistakes that I've made when I'm writing grants. So, but again, I see these a lot when writing grants. So the first point I want to talk about is lack of time. So not giving yourself enough time to write, revise, and submit your proposal. We all have a ton of things that we're trying to do. We're all teaching, doing research, service to the profession, service to our university, community service. So we're all doing a lot of things, but making sure that you give yourself time to write the proposal, think about what you want to do. Generally, I would say it takes about a year, but I have seen grants come together in about 4 to 6 months, 6 months being really on the shorter end, just because you have to do your background research. You have to know what has been done in the area, what are you going to do, how does what you want to do, how does that add to the literature, why should someone fund your project, put money behind what you want to do. And because we are all doing research, we all have community partners or academic partners throughout the process. So making sure that you know who you're going to work with, you have a plan in place, you know what their role is. And again, that goes into knowing people who are experts in certain areas, contacting them. A lot of times I do cold calls if it's someone that I see that their work is very similar or what I want to do. And so it takes time. It really does. Adding into everything that we're all trying to do for our job. And also write. Once you have done your research, where the literature gap is, you know what you want to do, how you want to address that gap. You've identified your research team, your partners. Then you have to sit down and write. And for me, it takes a long time to write. I'm not a very good writer. That's the reason why I'm so dependent on my team. And so making sure that I write, get feedback, write, get feedback, write, get feedback, and then just keep revising and revising. And generally, it takes months for once I start to sit down and write the grant from the initial sit down to write. Usually takes about 3 or 4 months just for that part. And then the submission process. A lot of times, if you are submitting yourself to an organization like PAEA, not giving yourself enough time, you're like, oh, it's going to take me 15, 20 minutes. And then you sit down, you're like, oh my goodness, I don't have everything ready. And so just the process itself is extensive just to submit the grant. So making sure that you give yourself enough time, a couple weeks from the submission deadline at the very least. That way you can work out any issues that you experience while you are in the submission process itself. One of the things that I have learned to do is seeking external review from experts. At Wake Forest, we have what's called research studios, where we have people who are other faculty who are NIH funded, who will sit down, review your grant, and do kind of like a mini mock session with you to see what are the issues that you're experiencing, what do they see as the holes and the gaps in your methodology, and really being able to have enough time to have everything written down for them. It takes a month and a half to do that. So I cannot stress that enough, is that seeking external review from experts in their field, that's the only way that I've gotten any of my work funded. So I highly recommend, if you know anybody, absolutely reach out to them. If you don't, if you find people you're interested in their work, make those contacts. Don't feel shy, cold email, cold call, whatever, and just really talk to people. That's the only way to build those connections. And so I've never had anybody say no, they don't want to work with me. So just be sure that people will want to work with you. Any questions so far on lack of time?
We
Hearing
don't have
none.
any questions at this time.
Hearing none, I'll go on. The next thing that I've seen, again, this is my experience as well, the unclear methodology. Sometimes we are so close to our methods, we know what we want to do. We don't see the blind spots in our own work or in our methodology. And so again, that goes back to seeking external review. But really, your methods need to be very, very clear and logically thought out. My goal is to never confuse a reviewer, because if I confuse a reviewer, then I'm probably not going to get funded. And my job is to tell a coherent, logical story about what I'm going to do and why I want to do it and how I will do it. And so make sure that you provide sufficient detail. Why is it important? The who, what, when, where. Making sure that you provide a logical, planned story. The conceptual model or theoretical frameworks are so important whenever you're trying to put a grant together, because what that does is it allows a reviewer to see how you're thinking and to put in context of what you're thinking, and they can put themselves in your shoes and say, okay, now I know why this is happening, why they want to measure these things, why they're doing this methodology. And so making sure that you put it front and center. This is the conceptual model that we're using. Put figures, graphics, in your proposal, where you have room. That way you can kind of lead a reviewer to know exactly what to focus on and how you are thinking about the problem. And vague hypotheses and outcomes not being testable are kind of similar, wrapped up in the same kind of concept, where if your hypotheses are not testable or they're vague, like detecting a statistically significant association, well, that's what we're all trying to do, but making sure that you have testable, defensible hypotheses. You have your hypotheses are grounded in the literature, and there is reason for why you are hypothesizing what you're hypothesizing, and making sure that your outcomes are testable, and that you can actually accomplish the outcome that you would like to do. Another thing that I have experienced, that one of the first things that whenever I was writing a grant and I got this advice, and I've used it every time, is if you don't identify the limitations in your grant proposal, someone else will, and you don't want that person to be a reviewer. And making sure that you present the limitations, the constraints that might limit the feasibility. If you're trying to identify a hard to reach sample, how are you going to do it? What are what issues do you foresee in the project, and how do you plan to address those? Having that plan gets the reviewer to know that you are thinking about things that could happen. We all experience things in life that we can't plan for, but for the things that you can plan for, that you will probably experience, making sure you put those in the grant so the reviewer can know, oh, they have alternatives or a way to address the limitations or constraints that might make their project not feasible. Another thing, again, goes back to the team, and I can't stress the team part enough. You need to make sure that you have methodology expertise on your team. My work, I am a methodologist, but I know certain things about policy, about qualitative research, have a lot of experience doing different things, but I'm not really an expert in one single methodology. If anything, it would be in statistical analysis. But generally, how are you going to do what you're going to do? Making sure that you have someone who knows how to do the project, how to do the methodology. If it's not you, making sure that you are engaging a team of people who know more about the concept or the problem than you. If that is not you, if that's you, then that's a different story. But making sure that you have sufficient expertise for your entire team, because if you don't have that, you really know where the blind spots are or where the issues you can anticipate. So really making sure that you have put together a good team with complementary skill sets. That's going to be the way to get your grant funded and make sure that you identify all the issues with your methodology. Any questions on the methodology part? And feel free to just unmute if you have a question.
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Having broad aims is another issue that I've seen, where again, trying to make sure that your aims are smart and that they're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, generally making sure that, and these are objectives, but also for your research aims. And one of the questions whenever I'm writing, one of the things whenever I'm trying to identify and nail down my aims is, do my aims logically flow from each other? Making sure they are distinct but related, and that they're feasible independently. Just make sure, one of the things that I see over and over again in reviewing grants is having aims that are dependent on each other. While your project should be related and should tell a coherent story, making sure that your objectives or your aims are independent. That way, if the first aim doesn't work out, then the entire project doesn't fall apart, and you're left with an unfeasible project from the beginning. And so, making sure that generally having a systematic way of addressing your aims, of writing your aims. Whenever I write, I have my first aim is more of exploratory. My second is a mechanistic where I'm actually actively doing something. And then I have an application or an analysis aim. Here's an example of one of my grants that was funded by NIH, where you can see the first aim is more of an exploratory process, looking at identifying the most important job characteristics that influence how people think or take jobs or evaluate jobs as clinicians. The second aim is more that mechanistic, is developing and creating a discrete choice experiment to identify preferences for policies to increase rural job uptake. And then the third aim is the application or the analysis, where we're actually estimating the preferences to identify those feasible rural job configurations that would increase the uptake the most in this group of, or in our population. So, any questions about aims?
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Thank you. And another one is having an unrealistic timeline. For PAEA, 18 months is a short period of time. Same thing with 5 years. There's not enough time to do all we want to do. And so, making sure that you know how long your grant is going to be funded, having everything in place. Whenever I'm trying to write a grant, I'm trying to convince reviewers that I have everything in place. We have the methodology, we have our team, we're ready to go as soon as we get, the approval. And when the first, check gets deposited, that we are ready to go and we can, start, strong and really just be able to keep on the timeline. Sometimes things happen. We've experienced things at my institution, mergers and things like that. But generally, just making sure that you're always trying to move forward and that you are, your project is feasible. In your grant, again, making sure you've identified all the limitations that's possible that you could run into, but and then present what you have planned to do just in case those do occur. If they don't occur, then you can finish the grant and make sure do what you got to do, but making sure that you show the reviewers, hey, we've anticipated difficulties, and these are the things we're going to do to address those in case they do come up. So that's really all I have for the talk, specific talk. And happy to answer questions or to just discuss your project and how you can get it prepared for the upcoming PAEA submission.